Okay, welcome back. And of course, in the news today is a very difficult topic and yet very alarming, dealing with gender confusion. I am really honored to have with us today Denise Shick. She is the founder and the executive director of Help for Families Ministry, the executive director of Living Stone Ministry. She's the author of 7 children's books and 7 nonfiction books, including My Daddy's Secret, Understanding Gender Confusion, A Faith-Based Perspective, and Transgender Confusion, A Biblical Q&A for Families. She has a BA in psychology and is a certified biblical counselor and life coach. So quite qualified. By the way, the website is Help for, the number 4, Families, helpforfamilies.com. And there's the picture of the landing page. Denise, good to see you. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your time and for what you do. You have indicated that you believe that the number of people self-identifying as transgender is increasing. This also relates to something I had the other day in talking to Dr. George Barna, where young people are self-diagnosing mental health. Is there a correlation?
Yeah, well, there very likely would be. I think a lot of what we're seeing, honestly, is a generation population with our younger people that are lost in a world they don't know who they are. There aren't any definitions that seem to be solid when no one can define what a man or a woman is. They also are allowing their peers, outside influences, to determine whether they have a mental condition, if they have dysphoria, whatever the condition is. I think we also have the effects of what has occurred due to COVID in the isolation, time where the young people were on the computers looking for community.
Wow. You have your background and your own story, I think, will help us to understand why you're in this. Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. When I was 9 years old, actually on a summer day right after school was dismissed, my father had asked me to go outside and to sit with him. Particularly, I had no idea what was going to occur. Obviously, I sat down with him on a small hill behind our garage, and he instantly told me of his desire of wanting to be a woman. I want to be a woman, were the words that he had spoken to me that day. Sadly, he also had revealed other details of his life. As a 9-year-old, you're trying to process, what's this mean to me? How does this change my life with what he's saying? I tried to tell myself as a young child that Dad and I were 2 separate people, therefore it wouldn't affect me. The fact of it being he wanted to become a woman. But I realized right afterwards I was so wrong during that time of conversation with him, because I immediately grieved the loss of a dad. Though he was struggling with this and wanted to be this and was still my dad, he was telling me he didn't want to remain in that role. So what's a child to do in that type of situation? I ended up, in my imagination, adopting different neighborhood men, the peers that I grew up with and the neighborhood kids, pretending that they were my dad for the day. I also had a couple uncles that were very special to me. And so I also, in my mind, had adopted them as a father figure. However, the confusion had carried on. By the time I was 10 and 11 years old, I really started to question if God made a mistake. Maybe Dad should have been a woman. But if God made one mistake, then Denise, how do you know that you were supposed to be a girl? So trying to walk out that type of confusion in the home for a couple years of what that really meant and what that looked like. And I really can't explain to you what occurred. I just remember one particular day where I was in my bedroom and just reflecting on all of this and thought, if I believe God made one mistake with my dad, and then he made another mistake with who I was, where do you believe those mistakes end? And I truly, in that reflection, realized that I don't believe God makes mistakes. But the journey continued as my dad remained in the home for several years yet. The struggle as I started to mature young, some of the things that had happened in the home, And by the time I was in 8th grade, I remember particularly saving my babysitting money, my lunch money, everything for alcohol to try to numb the pain of what I was living in and to escape. Also had seriously considered suicide. What really feared me is not being successful in that suicide attempt.
Wow. Boy, there's a lot here. Did your dad end up transitioning?
He did. He had left our family when I was 28 years old and transitioned to become who is known as Becky, the name that he had taken on, and to live that life for 13 years. A lot of what I learned, well, let me back up. As a 9-year-old, I understood that my dad and his dad did not get along. So my grandfather and him, there was a lot of conflict, a lot of dysfunction in his family, particularly. I already recognized that I had a grandmother that was an alcoholic, and there was some physical, really mental abuse that had occurred in the home. But what I didn't know until that particular day that he had shared with me is that he was sexually molested as well. So as a 9-year-old, I'm processing this, that he's wanting to escape.
Okay. So let me fast forward a little bit. At what point did you and God get connected, if I can put it that way? And
yeah, you sure can.
At when?
So I was raised Catholic, and I am so thankful for that because it gave me the understanding of God, of who he was, the reverence for God. But when I became really connected on a personal level, would have been when I was 15 years old, when I was dating a young man that was a Christian, and he introduced me to the idea of having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And that was all new for me. But there was something inside of me that was so hungry to have what he had. And so it was through that relationship where I'd come to the Lord.
Beautiful. All right. There's so much here. We're going to have to get you back. But let me ask you this. This gender confusion is just skyrocketing. It's just an amazing phenomenon that's happening. And I realize a lot of it maybe stems from childhood PTSD issues. I mean, your dad's case, he was molested. But also, it seems to be moving into the area with young people as being a fad or the power of suggestion. Is that true?
Yes, it is. I'll never forget it was actually 10 years ago when I had heard of the first case where 3 girls that were always friends from childhood were now in high school, and all 3 of them were wanting to transition. And that is not the normal for what was renamed as gender dysphoria. So there was something going on among the young people, if their friends doing it or if it's being insinuated that they should consider it, that you're really, maybe you're really a boy, just the power of suggestion among peers.
Okay. Well, we could deal a lot with that. One other quick question, then I'll take a break and come back. I guess the other thing that has my brain on tilt with this whole issue is why? Why has the medical community embraced it?
You know, I don't have maybe the answer that some would think that I have. I've always considered this as a money-making avenue. You know, the individual that's on, if it's a young person, puberty blockers, everything that's got to be done, especially if they have what's now called gender affirmation surgery. They're on estrogen or testosterone the rest of their life. A lot of these folks, sadly, are on antidepressants, anxiety medications. So it's constantly filling the pockets of those in the medical field that are practicing this.
Okay, let me take a quick break. We'll get Denise back here. We got more to talk about. Her website is helpforfamilies.com. There you can check out a lot what she's involved in, and that also check out her books, My Daddy's Secret, Understanding Gender Confusion, Faith-Based Perspective, and Gender Confusion, All Biblical Q&As for Families. Very timely, backed by experience. This is a classic example of something we say often here. Whatever God saves you from brings you through. He turns around and makes you a minister too. And such is the case with Denise. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, and honored to have with us today Denise Shick. She is the founder and the executive director of Help for Families Ministries, and she's also the executive director of Living Stone Ministries. And you can go to help and the number 4 families.com and check out a lot of information there. I think you find very, very beneficial, very resourceful, and check out her books. Oh boy, there's so much here. I guess the other part of this question about transitioning, Denise, has got my brain on till how did it become curriculum in public schools?
That's a good question. I think probably some of what's happened are individuals that struggled with these issues or were more of what you might say the activist type of the LGBT community. However, I believe that it's hurting individuals that are in our schools and in the communities, the educational systems that have pushed this forward because of what they wish or how they think things would have been better for them. It has slowly slipped in. I can recall about 11, 12 years ago where I was invited to speak at a school board meeting in Illinois. And at that time, this was already slipping in. When I say it, meaning that a child was coming to school getting dressed into the one restroom as a girl, and the parents were not notified. And so obviously when this became out in the open, this was the cause for the board meeting. Mm-hmm. During that specific board meeting, it was also able to see how the individuals, the board members, really did not want to hear what myself or other individuals that were very well qualified to speak into this. We were dismissed. So this has been a number of years ago.
The Tennessee case that was ruled in the Supreme Court just a couple of days ago, that's pretty significant, don't you think?
It is. I think that it should be a sigh of relief, that things are turning for the better, especially in protecting children. If an adult wants to transition, they have a free will to do so. But this is what is going on in our world is the worst case of child abuse. I never could have imagined that children would be used for this type of propaganda.
Yeah. Then the other part of it is, it's kind of like the whole argument dealing with abortion. We deal a lot with this argument to prevent it, but we don't really take the time to deal with post-abortion syndrome, which is very, very real. And you can take that same scenario over to this, post-transition trauma and regret. Yes. And this is being buried, but it's very real, isn't it?
It is very real. And there's a growing number of individuals that are detransitioning, or, to me, I guess you could say detransitioning, but really taking their life back. And yet, what is the support system for these folks? Generally, it's pretty difficult for them when they decide to no longer live or identify as transgender. They are bullied. Individuals that are transgenders or part of a certain community will insist, well, then you never were. They lose basically their community. So if they are leaving the life or the identity as a transgender person, the hope is that the church, the good, solid, godly, healthy people would come alongside of them to be their friend, to disciple them, to be a part of their new community.
Is it true, and this is a little bit rhetorical, but is it true that gender reassignment surgery lowers the person's risk of suicide?
No, it isn't. And this is the thing, is that if people would look at the studies and what do the studies mean, but good solid studies, not something that somebody has put together. Uh, when these studies are done correctly, in the Sweden study that I'm referring to that has come out, and the latest one I believe was in 2014, that again is stating that the individuals, when they are put in the category of the study, so it can be somebody that identifies as transgender, it can be in that study those that have gone all the way by having the different sex affirmation surgeries on testosterone, or those that are just living the life. The fact is they are still at a higher rate, 3 times a rate higher than the regular population of considering suicide, and 3 times more. That is a high rate. The
Hmm.
question is if having surgery and doing everything that they're doing to look for that fulfillment, as my dad called it, or looking for an easier a way to escape the pain, it's not working. It's, to me, this is an issue of the heart.
Okay, to that point, where is the psychological community in this, or is it being bypassed just for the sake of mental health?
Well, I think in the past it's been bypassed, and there's been some fear to take ground to say anything. But again, I believe with what we're seeing, the turn, just as the Tennessee, the recent decision, the idea that everybody is picking up on what's going on with women's sports. They're seeing what has really been occurring and where we are. And so saying that there are now those in the psychology field that I think are feeling maybe a little bit more braver about standing against this and speaking against it. And again, particularly for children here.
Uh, Earlier, we talked a little about, you did, about the church's involvement here, and I couldn't agree more. And it's really interesting. Youth pastors are no longer worried about car washes and barbecues. They actually have young people coming to them with these issues. I mean, it's a whole nother level.
Mhm.
And I guess my question would be if a Christian parents are now dealing with this, their child is coming home and they're being influenced, the power of suggestion, the fad of all of this, and they're toying with the idea of transitioning, what should that Christian parent do?
I think one of the things that's important for them to remember is don't make the everyday dinner conversation or breakfast conversation about transgender, the subject matter, because there's more to their child than how they may be identifying as. So what we want to work on as parents in these type of situations is work on your relationship with them. Spend as much time with them as you can. We all do the best that we can, but we can also make sure that the role model that we're giving them about identity, who we are, as a man and a woman, as mom and dad, that is playing out in a healthy view as well for the child to experience. There's sometimes we can say everything that we can't do, but honestly, when we look at what we can do as parents or grandparents, we can be empowered to be able to speak into that child's life, to praise them for their unique giftings and talents, to surround them in healthy ways, healthy relationships.
Because, as you well know, the state's attempt to get between parent and child is unbelievable.
Yes.
But is an intervention ever a possibility?
There have been some families I know, just a few that have gone to other states, that have actually moved to other states that were safer than where they were because of the particular state they were in the access when they noticed when their child had come out to them as transgender, and they basically fled their home state to get their child the help that they felt that child needed. And that is really sad, isn't it, when we
Yeah.
have a state that's overriding where what a parent believes is best for their child.
Of course, social media is a big part of this, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Our children are on social media way more than what we can even realize. I have grandchildren, and when they come to the house, it's like the cell phones go down. We're going to have relationship time here. but just in general, never could I have thought that teenagers would have a phone. I remember the day when I was limited to 15 minutes on the telephone that hung on the wall. I know things have,
Yeah.
times have changed, but I do believe that we have rights as parents to limit their use on cell phones or on the computer with the social media. Social media is driving this force as well.
The other part of this is back to the medical community just for a moment, and I don't know if this is true, you're the expert, but they don't teach this in medical school, so therefore these transition surgeries are somewhat experimental. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah. And that's where some of the detransitioners have even said, that they were used for somebody else to test their way of what they thought they could do with man and woman. But particularly, that's the way that you would feel, right? Like a test rat in a sense, and not to have the thoughtfulness of what you are doing and how you are changing this person's life.
Because hormone treatment is a big deal, but isn't this kind of like chemistry experiments?
Yeah, it is. When you think that our body would work against, my body would work against the testosterone. That wouldn't be the natural chemicals. Uh, so the reaction, the sad thing here too, is that as the older people that had transitioned and now, have detransitioned, they are finding that they are having a lot of different physical situations where their physicians are saying to them that this is the consequences of what they've done to their bodies.
Wow. So I guess, Denise, one of the big questions, I only got about a minute left. Where do you think this is going? I mean, is it reached the wall, or we still got some growth here? Where do you think this is?
Well, I think in the next couple of years that we're going to feel like we're regaining some ground again of normalcy and what is okay and what isn't, and what's the best for children, particularly. I believe where we go after that is probably up to our government, the political leaders, and where they take us. Um,
Yeah.
as God's people, what we need to remember is that there's a lot of hurting people in the world, and they need Jesus just like any of us had and still do.
Wow, good stuff. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, first of all, Denise's website is helpforfamilies.com. There's the picture of the landing page. A couple of resources I think you'll find to be really good. We'll give you some, some guardrails here. Her book about her father, My Daddy's Secret, Understanding Gender Confusion, and a Faith-Based Perspective. And Gender Confusion, it's a biblical Q&A. And boy, this is so timely. You may want to check that out. Are those available online?
They are.
Okay, so you can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, check it out, or go through her website, helpforfamilies.com. Denise, you're fascinating. I think you have a lot more to share. We'll get you back. I want to say thank you for being obedient to the Lord's call to take your life's experience and help other people. This is really good stuff.
Thank you so much.
Okay, God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.